Let's talk about one of the most common and maybe one of the most misunderstood phrases out there. I'm fine. When someone refuses help, it's so easy for us to just assume it's about pride, or maybe they're just being stubborn. But the psychology behind it tells a way deeper story, one that's less about ego, and believe it or not, a whole lot more about survival. Just think about it for a second. Have you ever been in that spot, just completely carrying the weight of the world, feeling like you're about to go under, but then someone asks if you need a hand, and without even thinking, you just say, "No, I'm good. I'm fine." If that sounds familiar, you're not alone. And we're about to unpack the hidden reasons why so many of us do this. So this is really the heart of it all. On one side, you've got what we all assume, it's pride, it's stubbornness, it's ego. But on the other side is the psychological reality. This whole behavior is actually rooted in things like survival, protection, and adaptation. It's not really a conscious choice. It's more like a mechanism that's been wired in deep. And that brings us to our first big idea, looking at this as a survival story. We kind of have to reframe the whole thing. For a lot of people, doing everything by themselves isn't some kind of personality flaw. It's actually a skill they were forced to learn because, well, there just wasn't another option. This quote it gets right to the core of it, doesn't it? For so many people, that incredible independence that we see wasn't a choice they made to be strong. It was a flat-out necessity. It was born because reliable, consistent support just wasn't there when they needed it most. So what happens is, this self-reliance, it becomes a kind of armor. But why is that armor so heavy? And why is it so incredibly hard to just take it off and ask for help? Well, let's get into it. We're going to break down the 5 key psychological reasons. And here's a hint, none of them have to do with pride. Okay, so here's our roadmap. First up, a deep survival instinct. Second, there's this fear of being a burden. Third, it's about protecting yourself from disappointment. Fourth is that weird feeling that help always comes with a price tag, a sense of debt. And finally, number 5, recognizing this whole thing as an adaptive response, not something you'd actually prefer. Let's break these down. All right, let's dive into that first one, a powerful survival instinct. This quote just captures that internal battle perfectly. To the outside world, you look like you've got it all together. You're capable, strong, composed. But on the inside, there's this real struggle to actually trust that support will be there for you. Probably because your own experience has taught you that a lot of the time it won't be. And it turns out there's actually a name for this. Developmental psychology calls it survival independence. It's a very specific kind of self-reliance that gets learned really early in life. See, when support was unpredictable or just not there, your brain literally learned not to expect it. You just stopped asking, because asking didn't really get you anywhere. Okay, so next up is this deep-seated fear of being a burden. And this often comes from something that's sometimes called the easy child syndrome. It's where you learned early on to just avoid adding any kind of pressure to an already stressed-out environment. If you grew up and you could just feel the stress or tension in your home, chances are you learned to be cooperative and really low maintenance. You basically adjusted your own needs to avoid adding more pressure. So now, as an adult, asking for help doesn't feel like teamwork. It feels fundamentally wrong. It feels weak or just deeply uncomfortable. And that leads us right into the third reason, protecting yourself from disappointment. I mean, this quote is so stark, but it really hits the nail on the head. If a child's needs are ignored again and again, they just learn to rely on themselves. It's a defense mechanism, plain and simple. So here's the crucial point. This extreme self-reliance, it isn't about proving how strong you are. It's about avoiding pain. You'd rather just handle everything yourself, even when people are genuinely willing to help, because your nervous system has learned that depending on other people is fundamentally unsafe. It's a shield to stop that familiar sting of being let down. All right, number 4. Let's talk about why getting help can feel so weird. Psychology has a term for this too, imbalanced reciprocity. It's that gut feeling that you have to earn everything you get. So when someone offers you help with no strings attached, it doesn't feel like a relief. It feels like a debt that you now have to figure out how to repay. It's just a totally foreign concept when you learned that support was always conditional. And our 5th and final point really ties this all together. Your intense independence, it's an adaptation. It is not a preference. Nobody would choose this. It's what your brain did to adapt to an environment where maybe your feelings were overlooked. So eventually, your brain just learned to stop expressing needs altogether. And this is such an important thing to remember.
We have to reframe this with some compassion. When someone who's fiercely independent pushes help away, it's rarely about rejecting the person offering it. It's actually a sign that they just never got the chance to learn how to need other people in a way that feels safe.
Okay, so this is where it gets really interesting. This deep wiring for survival, it can show up in other surprising ways. Like, for example, a lot of people who are hyper-independent also say they just cannot stand small talk. It might seem totally unrelated, but there's a deep psychological link here too, and it's all about a craving for meaning.
So you might be thinking, okay, what in the world does being super independent have to do with hating small talk about the weather? What's the real connection here? Why does a brain that's wired for survival often find that kind of surface level chat so draining?
Well, it all comes down to this idea called cognitive complexity. You see it a lot in highly intelligent people. Their brains are basically wired to look for deep, abstract meaning and to find patterns in everything. Small talk feels empty because it doesn't have any of that depth. So, and this is the key part, it's not arrogance. It's not about being antisocial. It's just a different way of processing the world. It's a craving for substance over surface. Now, let's bring all of this full circle. It's really time for a new definition of what strength even is. If all these behaviors we've talked about are really about protection, then healing isn't about getting rid of that strength. It's not shifting from a state of constant, exhausting protection to a state of rest.
So when you boil it all down, here's the takeaway. What looks like pride is actually protection. What feels like a personal flaw is an adaptation. What gets judged as stubbornness is really a survival skill. And what can be mistaken for arrogance is simply a craving for meaning.
And this is the message I really want to leave you with. If any of this resonated with you, please understand that healing isn't about becoming weak or needy. It's about finally giving yourself permission. Permission to believe that you're in a place now where you are allowed to rest, you are allowed to receive, and you are allowed to trust. And that brings us to one last really powerful question to think about. For a mind that learned strength was all about building walls and handling everything alone, what if true, ultimate strength isn't found in that armor, but in the courage it takes to finally set it down? What if vulnerability is the ultimate strength?